welcome to the Intuitively Wild podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Levine. Living intuitively wild is about coming back home to ourselves. Here, we talk about how to live connected to ourselves, others, and nature, and make a commitment to radical authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance. On this podcast, we delve into a wide range of topics that span the human experience. We peel back the layers and talk about the things that are often not talked about. This is a space for us all to walk and wander this path of life together. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. Okay. I think we're going.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
So excited to have you here. I want to start by telling everyone how I met you.
Okay.
Because I like this story. We met at my spring equinox event. And what happened is that your friend Antonia followed me on Instagram. And so I followed her back. And I just felt the pull to invite her to the event. I just felt like we would get along and we were following each other. And so she came and brought you. And this was before I moved to Kerhonkson. So I was living in a different town upstate and I didn't know anyone in this area. And when you guys came to the event, you mentioned that you both live in Kerhonkson, which just felt very synchronistic to me. And we just were talking and I was immediately like, I need to be friends with these people. And then a couple weeks later, I moved and I reached out to Lily and asked if she wanted to do an event together. And now we are planning an event for the end of May. It's a tea ceremony and tea party for mental health and spring. And if anyone's in the area, this will come out the week of the event. So tickets are still on sale. That's how we met.
And here we are.
And here we are. So that's a little background, but before we go into anything else, I want to start with the first question I ask all my guests. What is something you wish people knew about you that you don't think many do?
That's a good question. I feel like people think that I'm very open, and I feel like people think that they kind of like know me right off the bat. But I actually feel like I keep a lot of things like to myself, and I like don't necessarily want to burden a bee just entered the chat.
Pause for a second.
One moment.
What's interesting is that actually is kind of how I've been perceiving you.
Okay.
I think as I've been meeting you and getting to know you more, there is this air of openness, but definitely this like, I don't know how to explain it, this circle of protection.
Yeah.
Or reservation, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word. Is that how it feels for you?
Yeah, I honestly like think about it all the time because I'm a Gemini rising and a Scorpio sun. So I feel like the Gemini rising in me, people think I'm just a chatterbox. Like I'll like often honestly like overshare also. But about things that I've already kind of processed and I'm comfortable with talking about already. And then the Scorpio side of me just has certain things that I just keep within myself that even at times in the past with some of my closest friends, they're like, stop. Like you have to take time to really open up for at least us so that you're not just bottling in certain things that are going on for you until they either overpour or you just keep repeating the cycle of it all.
Right.
I also feel like I hate burdening people with my issues, and then also just as a privileged blonde white girl sometimes, I'm not always wanting to take up space if I'm like having things that are going on for me, and so I'd prefer to just try to put on this almost, I hate to call it a facade because it feels genuine, but it also just feels sometimes like it needs to be there to not discomfort other people, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And I relate to so much of that, like so much of that. And what's your moon sign again?
I'm a Cancer.
Okay. So it's interesting because the moon sign is kind of how you support yourself emotionally. So the Scorpio might have you keeping things so reserved, but probably the fact that your friends are kind of like open up to us, don't bottle it up, is probably actually really supportive for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But that also took years. Mm-hmm. I honestly think that having a child kind of made me realize that I need to do it more for myself, because I just don't want my little Scorpio son doing that with us. So I kind of was like, damn, I guess I have to learn how to not be so closed off in certain ways if I want to be able to teach it too.
Yeah.
But also it happened with losing friends, or friends getting mad at me for holding certain things in that was harming myself, and then also potentially harming others too, because of the lack of even knowledge of it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'd tell. I wouldn't tell them, but I guess that's one thing I think people would be surprised to know about me, if anything.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important. And I do think that a lot of times relationships are what allow us to have that perspective about ourselves. I'm curious if you had the same level of self-awareness before you had your son.
I think I was like on my way. Me and my friend were just talking about this, because between like 2019 and 2021,
I'm grabbing my tea.
everything just changed so quickly. It was literally like this 180 happened between those 3 years. That's 3 years? No, 3-ish years. Like the beginning of 2019 to the end of 2021. When I was living with one of my best friends during like COVID times, there was this shift that kind of happened when I was living with them. And I feel we both always say like there was just this opportunity to start healing our inner worlds together, and our inner children, or whatever you want to call it. So I feel I was already on this process of reparenting myself that I hadn't really ever truly done. I'd always wanted to, and there were just certain things that I was still doing, and certain patterns that I was still living in that didn't really let me to ever truly reparent myself or start genuinely taking care of myself in that way. And then I think I've mentioned this to you before. I kind of just had this moment where I stopped really drinking, and I stopped really doing as many self-destructive things as I was doing before. And I've mentioned like my eating disorder. It was really...
I actually don't think we've ever talked about this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to talk about this, because I had one too. I don't know if we've talked about that.
I feel like, want to know, it's not anything about the way that you even like present yourself. I just think I have something that I've called like an eating disorder radar, like a radar of where I just know.
Yeah.
Because I feel like everyone might kind of have, like anyone who has it. I can't explain what it is specifically, because eating disorders are so varied, and there's so many different types that it's like hard to really be like, well, that person has it because he or she does X, Y, and Z. But there's just this energy that I feel I always connect quickly with people who have had eating disorders as well. But that year, 2019, 2020, was the year that I just chose to stop. And it was the craziest, like, I had never really even... I was in so many support groups. I was in therapy for it. It's not like I wasn't conscious of it. And I was also like, I would post on the internet all the time about body positivity and healing from eating disorders. And I was on the path, but I wasn't there. And then living with my still best friend, Bex.
Shout out.
Shout out, Bex. It was like, they knew everything about my eating stuff, because it was just out in the open at that point, because I had been very vocal about it already. I just hadn't really gotten to the next level of healing. And I just was like, do I want to lie to this person the entire time we're living together? Do I want to continue to live in that and not be able to also have this sweetness that I think could come from living together? And I kind of just told myself, so what I used to do, like could be triggering, so I want to do like a trigger warning. But I used to take laxatives. We could have a whole podcast dedicated to just eating stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it was a decade long, and it had many lives and many different forms. But at that time, it was laxatives, and it was like, trigger warning again, bulimia. And I remember when I was moving into the house with them, I said I will never buy another pack of laxatives again.
Wow.
And I didn't say anything to anyone. I wasn't like posting about that. I just made a rule for myself. And then I never did. I'm gonna cry. But like, okay. It's just so crazy thinking about, because I think it was in that moment I just chose to live in this new beginning instead of continuously holding myself back through my own actions, you know? And then Bex was just an amazing roommate, and one of the things we really enjoyed doing together was having meals together, and I loved cooking for us and having nourishing meals during COVID times. And I feel like, what was even your question?
I don't even remember, but this is perfect.
So, yes, I was having this like awakening before having Marlow. My child's name is Marlow, because it was the first time I was really healing from my eating disorder. And also, I had so many things happen at that time where I'd exploded a few friendships. Like, there were just these breaking of ties and connections that were happening that were kind of helping me at that moment step into the person I was trying to be, and also maybe was already somewhat perceived at by the outside in some ways. And that house, living in that space with one of my closest friends, really kind of let me start doing that. And then I got pregnant about 10 months after that real beginning of healing. And yeah, Marlow was a huge surprise. I found out when I was 3 months pregnant.
Wow.
If you're on birth control, it's not always very effective. So yes, I do think I was already on that journey. But then honestly, having a kid kind of set me back for a minute, because postpartum is just a cycle. I don't even know how to articulate what I went through in postpartum, because it was such a blur in so many ways. But I think having a toddler and seeing so much of not just myself, but my parents, my brother, Chris's family, seeing so much of that in him already, and just being like, okay, I want to get to a place where I can at least, I'm never going to be perfect, obviously, but if Marlow's ever struggling with things that I've struggled with, be able to genuinely and honestly help him and lead him in ways so that it's not repeating patterns for the rest of eternity.
That's so beautiful. So much to say.
I know.
Thank you so much for sharing. And for me, my healing really kickstarted when I went to treatment for my eating disorder, but that forced me to be around other people, and that forced me to have the connection, the community. And I love what you were saying around how you and your friend who you were living with would cook together, and you found healing through that connection. And also, it speaks so much to the fact that we're not ready for something until we're ready for it. You know, no one can force us to do anything. We can't force ourselves. And then one day we just are ready. We can do it. And I've had those moments so many times in my life, especially with my eating disorder, where one day, if there's something I've been working towards or trying to do for so long, I'm setting goals with my therapist, my dietitian, and I just can't do it. And then one day I wake up and I'm like, I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
And that it sticks. One, I think that speaks to showing up for yourself every day and taking the small actions that you can in each moment. And two, letting those add up and trusting that one day, if you do that, it will lead to the big thing.
Yeah.
And what has kept me going and what I think about to myself still to this day when navigating recovery is, how would I want to show up for my future children? What would I want to model to them? What would I want their relationship with food, with their body, with exercise be? And so I have to do that myself.
Yeah.
And I want to be the model for them, and I want to live in integrity. And so I need to do it now.
No, exactly. And I feel like, I don't know, I think that there's this shift in our generation to a certain extent. I mean, I know that every parent tries their hardest, and also having a kid, you're just a human, and then you're just trying your hardest to keep another human alive. And it's such a complex journey, and I'm not saying that anyone did a bad job or anything like that, but I think that even on the internet, all of the jokes about almond moms are like these things that we joke about, but they are really so...
They're serious.
And they get ingrained into your little mind that's just slowly developing. And then that just is your map for the rest of your life until you redesign it.
Yeah.
And I feel it's really beautiful that you're conscious of that already for the future, because it's really hard to even have to think that way. Like, be like, the way that I am can and will fully affect another little human if I choose to bring them into this world. And it's real. Some people don't fully have that thought when they're having kids. And then, like I said, the cycle just continues itself. And it is sad to see, but we can only control what we do.
Yeah, we can only control what we do. And we can only do our best, like you said. And something I always like to say is, once we know better, we can do better.
Yeah.
And it's been really helpful for me to talk through things with my mom and be really open with her about how she's impacted me, and also to watch her growth around it all, because that helps me bring awareness to how it is just patterns and cycles and generations passing things down. But this is something that I get really upset about on social media, because yes, we have this self-love, body positivity movement everywhere, but it has become very surface level and Pollyanna, and there's still so many jokes about the almond moms and all these kinds of things. And even though we're joking about it, and there's awareness that we're joking about it, there's awareness that we can no longer like talk about trying to reach a goal weight or whatever, underneath it is still, you should look like this.
Yeah, for me specifically, I have fallen in love with going to the gym and exercising, and it's really hard not to slip back, especially if I'm scrolling and I see like, oh, workout for a snatched waist by summertime, like, and then I'll save it because I'm like, oh yeah, true, like I want to snatch.
Looks fun.
But I don't know, I feel like it is really complex, because it's okay, first of all, if you love your body in a certain form, that is okay if you're being healthy about it. And like, I keep saying I want a really fat ass. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, you
okay.
can say whatever you want.
My goal has been, I just want a bigger butt, but like, you know, a really nice one. And so I do eat foods that, like sweet potatoes and a lot of protein, and I am in a way more conscious of my intake of food, in a way just making sure I have enough of it to achieve a fatter ass. And it is such a slim, tiny line that crosses over to disordered eating. So years ago, I did this little self-project during COVID where I interviewed people with eating disorders, and it was all different types of eating disorders, just to kind of reiterate that eating disorders don't look just one way, and this kind of workout culture or just body goals kind of culture is also a form of eating disorder. And it's so normalized in our media in a way where no one even really bats an eye. But it does send a message, especially I always think about younger people. For me, like, my brain's fully developed now. I can kind of catch that when I look at something, and maybe it'll trigger me, or maybe I don't know. When I see it, I can acknowledge it and kind of move past it. But younger, like teenage girls, I think about like Tumblr back in the day. But that was like a whole other can, because that was like, they were like, eating disorders are great.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing a good job.
Like a cult of people who
it really
support
was.
eating disorders. Yeah.
But now I do feel like it's just, I don't know which is worse though. Because in one way, if you're just like, yeah, I have an eating disorder and I am working on being this, at least you're doing that first step, which is acknowledging that you have a disorder. Whereas if it's kind of what we're talking about in the media now, is we're joking about it, we're kind of teetering around it, but we're not really looking at these things as if they're sending a bad message to people. I just think we have to stop talking about women, just about bodies in general, except for maybe fat asses and how to get that, because I think that's a very useful
good skill.
I think that's a tool.
Well, a couple of things. One, this is why I think intention is so important, because it's not necessarily what you're doing to a degree, but why you're doing it and how you're doing it. And that requires honesty and self-awareness and presence that a lot of people don't have. And it is such a thin line between truly doing things with the intention of wanting to be healthy and doing what works for you and crossing over into disordered eating. And I hate the word wellness, and I hate our wellness industry, because I would say 95% of it is disordered eating.
Yeah.
And it's very insidious, and it can be painted over very prettily, but it is truly making our society have disordered eating.
Yeah.
And it upsets me so much, because that was me for so long. I had no awareness that I had an eating disorder. I knew I had certain struggles with disordered eating, but when I first went to treatment, I was literally in treatment, and I was like, I don't have an eating disorder. Like, why am I here?
Yeah.
And it took me so long to be able to say that I had an eating disorder and that I was worthy of help and that I should be there, because so many reasons, honestly, but one reason was because it had been so normalized. So many of my habits had been so celebrated, and it's on us to choose a different narrative and to say this, it's not okay. Yeah. We can't talk about it like this anymore.
Yeah.
How do you feel like you've learned to speak about your body and feel in your body differently now? What was that process like for you?
I feel like it was in so many different waves. Mm-hmm. So earlier on in my disordered eating, it was kind of what you were saying in terms of being celebrated every time I was thinner, because I have a somewhat like not athletic, I don't know the term for my body type, but I played sports and I danced. Mm-hmm. So I feel like when I was really skinny, whatever, I don't like using that word either, but I was also quite muscular, but long muscular, if that makes sense. I really don't know the terms to use. Like a long muscular lady. I was like lanky. I looked fit, I guess was what it was. So I was like kind of always celebrated for that. Mm-hmm. I still remember one weird dad in my high school. Oh, every time I was losing weight, and he was one of the sports dads, he would always compliment me and be like, you just keep on looking more and more fit, more athletic. And I was just like, hey, weirdo, I haven't eaten in a week, but sorry, I joke about it now sometimes.
No, I do too, actually.
Okay, good. But anyways, so I feel like at that time, I did feel good about it. Mm-hmm. I was like, yeah, and I look good too, like whatever. Mm-hmm. And then there was a point after that, after high school, that I wasn't as active and I was just like not looking healthy. Yeah. And then when it shifted from not eating to trigger again bulimia, my body changed so drastically. And I was taking laxatives and I held like so much water weight and like so much, like I really like could barely even recognize myself at times. And I feel because of that shift, I felt I had to almost lie and be like, well, this is just me healing from my eating disorder. So you can't, like, I'm just like, you know what I mean, if that makes sense? So at that point, I was living in this lie, partially, but also just this discomfort of my changing body. And then it's interesting because I feel like I just stayed there for several years through it all. And then it wasn't really until I moved into that house where I was like, I'm never buying laxatives again, and I'm really going to stick to trying to heal right now, where I just almost stopped being so aware of the way my body looked. And I felt confident and I felt strong. I remember I was biking everywhere over those 2 years. I would bike from Brooklyn up to the Bronx and Riverdale to see my parents. I would bike to the beach. I was feeling really, really strong for the first time, I think, in like a decade. And because I was feeling that strong, I was also just feeling good within myself. And like I said, I was constantly cooking us meals. And I will say, shout out to Chris. That's when we were seeing each other. And he is a chef. So he would make really delicious foods. I remember breakfast was always one of my hardest things. And he just had such a different relationship to breakfast, where he would make these breakfast bowls with rice and vegetables and eggs. And that was so not, like, I was a bar girl for breakfast. So I remember even just feeling that nourishment in the beginning of a day, and then being able to go out to the world and feel just good. I also think that for a minute I didn't realize how much it really was. I know it sounds so disconnected because it's obviously a mental disorder, but I didn't realize how it was affecting so many different things in my mind, even just like socializing and even boundaries. It was all of these little things I feel happened when I was deep in my eating disorder. And then once I was coming out of it, everything just started feeling better. So I feel my mind started focusing on so many other things other than just my body, that I was able to just like exist. And then I felt really hot because I was just existing and having fun and making fun connections and having sex and feeling in my body in a way that felt whole. It was less about the way my body was on the outside. And then obviously having a baby was crazy. But I think I was a very cute pregnant lady.
Oh, I saw a picture today. So cute.
Thank you. And then postpartum was just, I definitely had a moment where I was like, I didn't fit into anything. And I had already had that moment like 7 years ago when but I was like, but you just had a baby. So just chill for a second. And then I would start slowly exercising, go on walks. We were living right by the rail trail at that time, so I would just go on walks and just naturally start to regain that strength in my body. And then it's been about 1.5 years since I've been obsessed with getting a bigger butt. And then I had this moment when I was going to the gym a lot again, where I was like, I need to check myself just to make sure I'm eating enough before I'm going to the gym, I'm eating enough after, and just not subconsciously fall back into patterns. And then like right now in this current state of my body, I feel the best that I feel I've possibly ever felt, because I feel really strong, I feel really beautiful, I feel just really good. And I know that I'm eating well, and I know that I'm not doing anything unhealthy to my body.
Yeah.
If only I could tell myself this a decade ago. You don't need to do what you're doing to achieve whatever it is that you're looking for, which was ultimately just like, happiness and confidence. And I feel for whatever reason at that time, like being skinny was what I thought would give me that.
Yeah.
And it didn't. At all.
Well, because that's what we're told, and we're told that we can't trust our bodies, we can't feel safe in our bodies, that we have to control it all.
Also, I feel every time you ask me a question, I just go on like a tangent.
No, it's amazing. I'm loving everything you're saying. You're doing great. One thing I wanted to say that I was thinking when you were talking is how having an eating disorder, having a disordered relationship with food, infiltrate every area of your life. And it does shift your brain. I remember talking to one of my doctors when I was in treatment, and she was like, you will always have to maintain a certain level in your recovery, because anything below that, like, your brain shifts, you know?
Yeah.
And I've felt that before throughout my whole journey, that moment where something just shifts. And this isn't everyone's experience, and I don't know if it'll be mine forever, but for where I'm at right now, I do always have to check myself. I always have to think and be really intentional and present with how I'm showing up and why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I know that even subconsciously old patterns can creep in and that shift can happen, you know? It not only infiltrates how you see the world and how you show up in the world, but also your identity. And you not only were going through your recovery process and this, I feel like, renewed sense of self in terms of your eating disorder, but then you also were becoming a mom, and that's a whole identity shift too.
Yeah.
So what was that process like? And also, how do you identify yourself now?
I'm still in the process of figuring that out. I think, honestly, I remember at one point when Marlow was 2 and he's turning 4 this November, I had this, like, I'm this person's mom, which is like, I think that if we're talking about stuff on the internet that's toxic, I think also certain, I actually don't even like saying that, because I feel like some people might just be perfect. No, but seriously, I don't like to say that content of certain creators is fake, because I actually don't know them. And they might actually be not perfect, but they might actually have this real ease in motherhood.
Okay.
Because some people's brains are just different.
Yeah.
But even if that's their reality, I think that sometimes it is hard to see certain things like that when maybe you're struggling in postpartum. And I think that personally for me, it was this change in my body and this change in everything. But also, we moved upstate when I was 8 months pregnant.
Wow.
And the coffee shop that we were living on top of, that Chris and his family and I own, was opening a month before I was due.
Wow.
So it was kind of all of these major shifts at once. And I think that I just automatically turned on autopilot, because I was just like, I can't even begin to comprehend all of these shifts at one time. And so I just kind of didn't process any of them. I just kind of let life happen and was just there for the ride. And then Marlow was born, and he was such a chill little guy when he was first here, other than the fact that he needed to sleep on me all the time. But even through that, he would sleep through the night just on top of me. What was your specific question? What's my identity now?
That was the second part of the question, yeah.
I think that I'm still figuring that out. I think doing things like this is helping me figure that out. I think that I have this vision of myself where I'm able to do everything that I love to do and do it well and be organized and be on top of it all, while being Marlow's primary caregiver and making sure that he never feels maybe pressure that I'm under, stress. I feel I'm still on that path trying to figure that out. I definitely love being a mom, and I, in so many ways, feel like, and I hate to put this pressure on him, but I feel Marlow saved me in a lot of ways. And maybe not saved, maybe I think I was already on that path. But him coming here, he was like, well, you started, and now we're catapulting you.
Now you gotta finish now.
You gotta finish it up, because I need you, because you're my mom. But yeah, I think I told you I teach dance at a school up here, and then I have my shop on Main Street, and I'm a part of the restaurant in my own little weaving in and out kind of ways. And I think that in so many ways on the outside, that is really me. All of those things, working with children, dancing, clothing, food, those all are pieces of me. and help identify who I am in so many ways, and obviously being a mom. But yeah, I really feel like meeting you was this kismet moment for me where I was just like, this is a door that I haven't yet fully opened. Even the community gatherings, that's something I always envisioned for Pink Clementine, but I just never could make that step and do it. So I feel like you're helping me be on my path right now, but genuinely. And even doing this, this is fun.
Yeah. No, that's so special. And I feel like you are helping me as well because, I mean, for so many reasons, but I'll share that, you know, my path, I've lived in so many different places and have different friends all over, and I have so many relationships I'm very close to, but moving here, I've had this whole shift in direction of wanting to put down roots, really wanting to have deep community and deep connections and really impactful friendships here. And that is very scary for me. It's very easy for me to do my own thing. And a big part of my eating disorder was isolation and was being like hyper independent in a lot of ways. And so opening up myself to the world more and letting more friends in and doing things with other people isn't my natural fallback. And so meeting people who I feel so excited to connect with, it just feels like this reassurance of this is the place, this is the time, you know?
Yeah.
So it's nice. The best relationships, even if you just meet someone for one moment, are the ones where there's this reciprocal impact, you know? I think that's what relationships are.
I hear you. Yeah, and I feel especially in this time in life too, right? Because I have so many friends too that are still in my present, but are from my past. That I feel you need that less and less when you become sisters or like I call my friends like my cousins or my sisters, where it's like, you know, sometimes you have expectations and you want to have that reciprocal, but sometimes it's not in that moment. And because you're friends for so long, it's not as necessary. But I do feel like in this time when you're meeting new people and you're making new friends, unless it's feeling like this pull to connect and also see how we can lift each other up, why would I need a new, not to be...
No, it's 100%, yeah.
But I definitely felt that when Antonia sent me your event, I was like so excited, and I was like 1000%, like we have to go. And then I remember the day of, we were both feeling like, do we want to drive an hour? Like, we're tired. It seems like so much fun, but it was like, you know how like that can
all the time
get sometimes. But there was just something, and especially because I messaged you because I had felt bad that I had reserved it later or whatever. I was like, no, this is who me and Antonia talk about wanting to be too, doing these types of things and really committing to that version of ourselves. I was like, we're committing to this version of ourselves, and we're going. And we both like, it was like not even just the event was beautiful and we had so much fun, but even we ended up having like a therapy session on the way back kind of thing. So it really felt really special.
I love that so much. And I wanted to, I guess, kind of going back to the identity piece, is how did you make the decision to open Pink Clementine? Maybe tell people what Pink Clementine is.
Pink Clementine
Here's your sales pitch.
Is a consignment store where, well, curated consignment, I guess you can say.
It's a beautiful store.
Where I sell different small woman-owned businesses that are either local to the Hudson Valley or local to where I'm from, which is the Bronx. And the way that, honestly, the idea of her started because Main, which is a provisions and coffee shop and restaurant located in Kerhonkson, New York.
Everyone should come.
That strip was where we were living. We were living on top of Main. And at that time, there was a tattoo parlor, amazing aesthetic tattoos. They're now in Rosendale. I got a scorpion tattoo from them. And I
need to go there.
It's a great, you should definitely. I'll send you their Instagram. Okay. Anywho, so that was on the block. And then there was a sewing shop there, but it was more like it was like their studio kind of. and they did some community nights there. Some like they did like a ukulele night. It was sweet, but there wasn't really anything that you walk into there. And when the tattoo parlor was leaving, and then also the sewing shop, they were building their own studio on their property and everything. So when the talks of that started happening, my mother-in-law was always knowing that I had so many different types of ideas. As I said, I'm a dance teacher, and my background is working with children. I've worked in daycares. I've been a dance teacher in the city before. I've nannied, and that's what I have always done. So she was kind of just like, you should think of something and talk to the woman who owns the building next door, and we need more stuff here. And so that's when it kind of started. And the idea, the first name I had for it was called A Little Bit of This, because it was an idea to just have a bunch of different types of things and maybe even have a little dance studio there or something pulling from parts of my life.
All the different things, yeah.
And then it just kind of, because it ended up being a little longer than I thought. I thought I was going to be renting in 2023, but it ended up being started in 2024. So then that year was a blessing though, because that's when Pink Clementine kind of evolved. But I will say part of what Pink Clementine was always meant to be was community space. And then I just never really tapped into that side of it. And the way that it turned into more vintage and that kind of realm of things was literally because Chris was like, you need to get rid of all of your fucking I feel like am I allowed to curse?
Yeah, you're allowed to.
Okay. I have so much vintage stuff that I've been collecting since I was a child, like 14 years old. Shout out. Actually, I'm not shouting it out. My Bronx spot. So it just kind of turned into this, and thrifting is like something that I've always really loved. It's something that is like a therapy for me, going to a thrift store and sorting through for hours. And then I also have multiple friends who have a line of vintage stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I have so many amazing friends and just new connections of people who make these beautiful crochet bags or corsets or whatever it might be. And I kind of was just wanting a space where I could highlight all of these awesome, beautiful women in my life that I have like one of everything that they all make. So I was like, this feels like the path I want to go. And then Pink Clementine, the name came because I wanted to name Marlow Clementine really badly. My baby shower was Clementine themed.
Oh, wow.
And everyone vetoed it. So
now your other baby's Clementine.
My other baby was Clementine, and then Clementine was taken. And then my friend Leary, who, shout out Leary.
Leary's going to be at our event doing tarot.
Yeah, she will be, and she's the best tarot reader ever. But one of like the first times I met her, she told me my aura was pink.
Wow.
And that just kind of stuck with me. And then Pink Clementine.
I love that. I love that story. Yeah. And how has it been starting Pink Clementine? What does your connection to it feel like now? Because it's been a year?
Almost a year. It'll be a year at technically a full year in the beginning of June. I opened Memorial Day weekend, but it was a soft opening. So that might be the anniversary, but I'm still figuring that out.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, it's been the biggest learning curve. But I really am excited, and what I really want to tap into this year is the community aspect of it. I just have so many little ideas that I feel like big. Big ideas.
The perfect size.
The perfect size ideas that I have been workshopping in my brain, and even doing it for friends at times. And I think I get imposter syndrome all the time when it comes to certain things. And then it holds me back from actually doing them. And I think this year I'm just wanting to be like, fuck it. I'm going to try everything and see what sticks and not get discouraged if certain things don't.
Yeah.
I think I told you this. I had this coffee grind reading. Did I tell you about this?
I think you mentioned that you had it, but you didn't tell me what it was.
Well, just like one aspect of it. So it was this woman, Ani, and she brews you a cup of coffee, and then she reads the cup and she reads the grinds that are left over.
That's really cool.
I think that's specifically how you do it, but I'm not well versed fully. But anyways, one of the questions I had for her, because I was having such a discouraging moment where I was like, am I really meant to be doing this? Should I break my lease early? Because sometimes it feels like it's just not profiting, and it's discouraging at times.
Yes.
And she was like, no, you're meant to be in that space right now, and you haven't even touched the surface of what you can and should be doing. And I was just like, okay. But it did reinvigorate this thing within me. And I do feel at the end of the school year, when I have my weeks back fully, I'll be able to tap into that a little more and hopefully get there. I'm also looking for people who want to be involved in a way where it could be more of a collaborative thing, because it is difficult doing it all. I mean, I love my girl Eliza, who works there, but she's leaving us for college. But I'm hoping that somebody comes in and is like, it's me.
Yeah.
I want to do that. But it feels good. It feels good that I started something on Main Street that felt like mine, because it did also sometimes feel like I was in the shadows of Mill and Main. And not that that's even really a bad thing, but more just like have my own identity here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not just be Marlow's mom or Chris's partner or that girl that I see at Mill and Main all the time. So it definitely grounded me here more. It made me feel like this is also where I'm supposed to be.
That makes so much sense. And I think that is one of the things you have to just get comfortable with when you start your own business. This is what I've learned. You're going to have so many moments when you think you should give up and when it looks like and feels like it's not working. And you really have to be okay with just putting yourself out there and just trying so many things. And I was actually talking recently to someone about imposter syndrome and the fact that it never goes away. Yeah. You could be the most renowned person in your field and you still will get imposter syndrome. And I think part of that is because it happens when you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And so you don't know what the result is going to be like. If we're always staying comfortable or safe, or if we know exactly how it's going to be received or how people are going to respond or what they're going to think, then we probably won't feel imposter syndrome because we know it's just all going to be okay.
Yeah.
But when we're like, oh, I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know how this is going to feel for me. I don't know what people are going to think about me or about this situation. I think that can bring up the imposter syndrome. And so for me, I've had to hold on to this radical confidence and the audacity to just do it, to just believe that I want to do it for a reason.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to try.
Yeah, exactly. But it's hard.
It's
and to get to that.
Yeah.
To have that thought, but then to just be like,
still do
okay,
it.
I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm. No, it's like an everyday commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just, it's definitely not one and done. It's every day, even every moment being, okay, in order to honor that, I have to do this. And it's very uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it.
Okay, we're going. If you are watching this on YouTube, you will see that we are wearing different clothes and in a different situation because last time when we recorded, we paused before the last question for a little bathroom break, and then when we came back, it wasn't recording. We didn't realize until after. And now Lily's back, and we're trying to re-record, and this is our third time. So we've been having some technical difficulties, but we are back, and we're going to record the last question. And it speaks to just rolling with the punches and letting life be imperfect and messy. Last question. Living intuitively wild means living dedicated to your true, authentic self, no matter what. How do you feel like you live intuitively wild?
I feel like the way that I live intuitively wild is just being honest with the people in my life about where I'm at on all different levels, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Like, I feel like just not feeling like I have to hide where I really am to the people I'm closest to helps me have not just deeper connections, but also feel more like myself and feel like there's space to be myself. I often used to repress emotions or not be honest about how I was feeling, and I think that made things worse with friendships and relationships, and ultimately then my own relationship to myself. So yeah, I think just being honest about where I'm at helps me be intuitively wild.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry, my answer kept shifting.
No, it was great. It really was.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.